RealAgriculture.com presents Under the Microscope with BioVision Seed Labs. We're here on RealAgriculture.com for another edition of the Under the Microscope with BioVision Seed Labs, and as usual, we're joined by Holly Gellick. Welcome to Holly.
Hello, Sean.
Holly, this week we're going to talk about Triffid. Something that was in the news a couple of years ago as a big news item. Let's start very briefly from what is Triffid?
Well, CDC Triffid is a variety of flax that was developed out of the Crop Development Center back in the 1980s, late 1980s. And it was evaluated in field trials, confined trials in Western Canada in the early 1990s. And what's unique about CDC Triffid is the plant breeding method that was utilized to develop the variety. And really what it comes down to is the variety was developed using a method to insert genes to produce a specific variety. And the variety was very unique in the fact that it was tolerant to some soil residues that are in the soil after utilization of a herbicide in cereal crops to control broadleaf weeds.
Okay. And of course, the big news story was that European buyers found traces of Triffid flax. Even though it was taken out of the seed system, they found traces of it in a shipment. Was that correct?
Absolutely correct. And keep in mind, the European Union is Canada's biggest client for flax exports. So it was a big deal back in 2009 when they detected it.
Yeah. So not in the news as much now. If I'm going to seed flax this year, whether it's seed or if it's I've saved some seed, do I need to test for Triffid still?
Yes, absolutely. The Flax Council of Canada still is running their program. They have been seeing successes in the fact that they are seeing the frequency of detection of Triffid is less than prior years, as well as the level of Triffid is less, but there is a continuation of the program. So the Flax Council of Canada's initiatives are a certified seed program where it is advised that seed growers test not only off the combine, but also on the clean sample. Seed growers are very familiar with this program, but what regular farmers need to know is the farm stewardship program that is run by the Flax Council of Canada, where they are recommending that every farm saved seed lot is tested this year that goes into the ground. So
if I tested my seed last year and I'm saving my seed and I get it cleaned, do I need to test it again?
The recommendation is to test it after processing. So absolutely, yes.
Okay. And how do you test for Triffid?
It's a very sophisticated test that is done by a DNA extraction and utilizing a system called real-time PCR. So to put it into layman's terms, basically we take the flax seed that is shipped to our lab, then we grind it, and we add extraction reagents to the mix to extract out the DNA. And then at that point, we add a different set of reagents that is targeting the specific GMO event that we are detecting, and that's the CDC Triffid GMO event. So we utilize very sophisticated means to then add the reagents to the sample and then run it through a machine called a real-time PCR machine, which amplifies or replicates the DNA until it gets to a detectable level.
So to put it very simply, there is no farm gate test for Triffid.
Correct.
So Holly, with such a complex test, how do you make sure the test is accurate?
Well, there's a number of checks and balances that we have in place. So the protocols that we use to test CDC Triffid flax, as well as the other laboratories, is a protocol developed by the European Commission. So we are using the same test that the European Union is using. There is a specific validation that is required by labs to offer this test. So at the beginning of the process, labs work with the Canadian Grain Commission and the Flax Council of Canada to become accredited basically to offer the test. So it's a validation process both on known and unknown samples. If we pass, then we are then allowed to run that test. So, and this process is not just a snapshot in time. Every year we get samples from the Canadian Grain Commission and Flax Council of Canada to ensure that we are still running the same procedure and the same processes and the results. So there's that checks and balance, as well as in the laboratory setting, we run 4 reps of each sample. So to give you an idea on the result, we also have balances that occur in tandem with the sample. So if we're running a producer sample, in tandem we run both a known sample of flax that has CDC Triffid, as well as an unknown sample, which is basically a sample of flax that does not have the Triffid event. So there's lots of checks and balances in place for a producer to become comfortable with this DNA test.
And just so people, you know, a lot of people would say, well, that sounds like a complex test. The industry is making me do this test. Obviously, the farmer first jumps to what would be the range of the cost of the test?
Well, the Flax Council of Canada has run an initiative both last year as well as this year, where they are putting money on the table for farmers to do this test. So the Flax Council of Canada is paying for half of the test. So that's significant because these DNA tests are expensive. So the cost then to the producer is no longer close to $200. It's closer now to $100. So this shows the importance to the Flax Council in Canada and the flax industry.
Yeah. And I guess it's about industry stewardship, right? The last thing we want is to not take, now that we know there was some sort of exposure, we need to do everything we can to minimize the impact, correct?
Absolutely. And I think farmers need to know that when they're delivering commodity grain, obviously a test needs to be done on the commodity grain as a grain. But keep in mind, a lot of the buyers are asking also for reports of analysis from their seed that they use to plant that commodity grain, whether it was a certified seed lot or whether it was farm safe seeds. So keep in mind, farmers need to keep their records for both their seed that they're planting this upcoming year as well as their commodity grain.
Okay, Holly, well, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you again in the next episode of Under the Microscope.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean.